you might find elements of the next story distressing. The Metropolitan Police have apologised after a 15-year-old black girl was strip-searched at her school by police officers. Now, she was on her period, which is another distressing element for her of the strip search. The reason that was given at the time was that she was suspected of carrying cannabis. She wasn't.
The report stated that racism was likely to have been an influencing factor in the decision and concluded that the search should never have taken place. Joining us to discuss this further, former Metropolitan Police Superintendent Dal Babu, former teacher Zara Bay, who is also the co-founder of No More Exclusions, and also we have True Pal, who is a parent, joining us on the desk this morning. Good morning to all of you. Dal, if we can start with you, this is such a distressing case. The statement that the girl released through her solicitor described what she went through. Someone walked into the school where I was supposed to feel safe, took me away from the people who were supposed to protect me and stripped me naked while on my period. I can't go a single day without wanting to scream, shout, cry or just give up. I don't know if I'm going to feel normal again, but I do know this can't happen to anyone else ever again. There are other details that we haven't shared that are even more extreme. I wonder, as a former police officer yourself, how this could ever have happened, how the police officers involved ever felt like it was the right thing to do to take this student to a separate room where there was no other adult there and strip search her.
Well, it's shocking. It's absolutely appalling. And, I mean, I've got two daughters. The idea that my daughter would come home from school and say that something like this had happened is absolutely appalling. So there's absolutely no justification. I think we need to look at the events. I think all the adults in the room involved in this have failed the child, have failed in safeguarding. And we need to understand why the school felt it necessary to call the police, why they didn't deal with it themselves. And then it seems to be quite shocking that the police officers thought it was appropriate to search somebody in that particular way. I mean, I won't go into the graphic details of that, but it's pretty appalling. And
what should have happened? Is there protocol for a moment like this where police are called to a school in order to search a pupil?
Well, the schools, the teachers have significant powers. So under the law, if you find drugs, you can take the drugs and dispose of it and flush it down the loo or something. You don't need to call the police. The police don't need to be involved. So, I mean, I don't know the details of why the police were called, but the police should have had the common sense to say, actually, we're not going to do the search. This is down to you.
As I understand it, an initial search had been done because she had... In the report, the teachers thought she smelled of cannabis. They'd done an initial search, just, you know, and not found anything, and then called the police, who thought it was OK to strip search her, Zara.
Yes.
I don't have girls, I have boys, but I can't imagine my 15-year-old what the reaction would be if they came home from school and said, today, I was taken out of an exam and two police officers searched me in this way. I'd be absolutely appalled. Her mum wasn't called. There was no other appropriate adult in the room. The Met Police have apologised, but do you understand how this happened?
My heart is racing just as you describe all of that, because it's definitely re-traumatisation here for a number of people involved.
Right.
As a teacher and as a parent and as a human being, I'm appalled that any child could be treated this way. And in fact, no one should be treated this way, but children in particular, and in particular in a place of safety, which is what schools are supposed to be. So I feel beyond, I would say, rage about this. And in terms of your question of how could this have happened? Dal has already talked about the fact that there are a number of systemic failures that happen in this case. And what is important about this case is, first of all, to say how horrific it was. But it was only one out of 26 other searches that happened in that borough alone of Hackney in 1 year, intimate searches that involved children. So it is systemic. And out of those 26 searches, 22 led to the police finding nothing.
Right.
Right? So children are being sexually assaulted for no reason.
And this is what it feels like, I can imagine, is that this was an assault, Dal.
Yeah, I mean, this is... you have legal parameters before you can carry out searches. if you don't adhere to those legal parameters, then you're assaulting an individual.
Yeah. And were the legal parameters followed here?
No. I mean, you should have had an appropriate adult. Parents should have been called. You should have had somebody in the room. I mean, I just cannot think. I mean, when I was a schools officer earlier on in my career, I was a custody sergeant. You would authorise strip searches, but they would be in controlled situations, often in the custody cell, and for very, very, very good reasons. I cannot think why you would ever justify searching a 15-year-old child in a school.
True. One of the accusations in the report is that the reason that this was done was because she was black. Mm-hmm. That there was a racist element to this, because young black girls and boys are treated as adults instead of as children. It's a process called adultification, mm-hmm. and it's done by police towards young black children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And firstly, this story has really, really broken me. It's one of those stories that you read and you're like, is this real? Am I in a dream? I have a 15-year-old daughter, a 15-year-old black daughter that goes to school. Before she left for school yesterday morning, I gave her a massive hug and told her to be careful. No conversation that a father should have with their child when going to school. And it is because she's black. As you said, these schools adultify our black children. They criminalise our black children, and they're not seen as victims. They're seen as adults and they're seen as criminals, which is why they feel that they can justify this ill treatment. I mean, when we think about the parameters of this case, and I will not go into detail about it, but the very fact that both police officers plus the teachers, safeguarding leads, heads, all of those agencies in that space thought that it was appropriate for those police officers to sexually abuse that child.
I mean, you call it sexual abuse, and I understand that. You're calling the strip search a form of sexual abuse. Yeah.
Zara, how have we got here? And how has this been allowed to happen? I mean, it's not the only case. There are other cases of racism within schools from the authority figures that are there to protect them. I think the thing that is so heartbreaking about this statement, regardless of the detail that we're not sharing, but as she says, someone walked into the school where I was supposed to feel safe, took me away from the people who were supposed to protect me. How have we got here?
We haven't got here in a vacuum or overnight, certainly, and I would posit this within a historical context. Black children have always been treated unfairly by the British education system, and I would urge everyone to read Bernard Cord, 1971, how the West Indian child is made educationally subnormal. A lot of what's in that book still applies today. Disproportionate, segregated education settings for black children, disproportionate punishment, disproportionate exclusion, disproportionate labelling as having mental health and social and emotional problems.
How do we shift that perception? How can we get to the point where this can never happen again?
It's really difficult, because everybody wants a solution. I was talking to your researcher yesterday, that in order to change things, we'll have to change everything. We have to change our values as a society, the way that we view children, in particular black children. We need to be able to afford black children the benefit of innocence, the same way we afford that benefit to all other children.
Dull, would this have happened if a white child smelled of cannabis, do you think?
No, I don't think it would. And I think it's ironic that you're doing, and quite rightly, you're devoting a lot of time on this story. It's ironic that we're talking about this on the day when the government have responded to the Tony Sewell report, which was literally a whitewash. I gave evidence to the Tony Sewell report. It was a Fawlty Towers event, and what basically Tony Sewell suggested was that we were beyond that, you know, that black and Asian people didn't need to worry about racism. We've gone beyond that. Actually, this just shows very different. I mean, just imagine if this was a white child in a private school in a sort of leafy part of the country. This would never have happened.
It would never happen. Never.
I can't understand as a parent how a strip search could ever be justified of a 15-year-old child. I mean, is there Dull is a former police officer, understanding how police operate. And there are police officers who are at schools because sometimes children do experience things at schools where you would want a police officer to be on site to protect all the children there. Yeah. But unless somebody was accused or suspected of having a weapon, I can't see how a strip search would ever be justified on school premises, and certainly not of a child.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, even with the knife situation, you would probably arrest the individual if you felt it was that serious. But teachers have powers. So I think what we need to be doing is not criminalising young people. The teachers have that power. Yeah. There was absolutely no reason whatsoever for the police to be there. The teachers could have dealt with the powers that they already have.
And what do you think should happen now? This happened 2 years ago. The report's only just come out. The Met Police say the strip search was truly regrettable and they have apologised. Is that enough, Zara?
It's not enough. Things have to change. That's what we really want.
But does something have to change in this case with these officers or this unit?
No, we're talking about the child has said herself when they asked her in the review, in her own voice, with her own words, what would you like to happen? And she said, what I would like to happen is for this to never happen again. Yeah. So she's not asking for revenge or retribution. Yeah. You've got a very articulate child saying, actually, what would be justice if this was never to happen to any other child again. Yeah,
no strips. I mean, it surely
really
goes without saying.
Really, what we say is that we don't want police in school, with all due respect, because you bring an inherently institutionally racist institution into an also institutionally racist institution, which is the education system, and you've got a cocktail... you know, a very toxic cocktail, I would say.
I mean, I suppose this is going to have massive impact around the whole debate about police in schools. I think police in schools are a good thing. I was a schools officer. You're there to help and safeguard.
Just to point out, the police officers who conducted this strip search were not the school's police officers.
No,
they were called from outside of the school.
The Met Police have said that the strip and search was, as Susanna pointed out, truly regrettable, and apologised to the child concerned with her family and the wider community. They added that it was right that the actions of the officers are held to scrutiny and welcomed the review.
Drew, what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see the officers involved sacked. I would also like to see the teachers and anybody that was involved in the case sacked. I don't want to hear the words regrettable. I want to hear the words unacceptable. We need to have a zero tolerance to this beast of racism, particularly when it pertains to our children, because right now our black children are not safe going into these schools when we have teachers and police officers who abuse their authority in that manner, so they need to go.
And colluding?
Yeah.
The idea as well that her classmates saw this happen, heard about it, and then they're having to go to school where those teachers allowed that to happen. It felt like that was the right thing to do, that they were... It's just terrifying.
I just want to say to all the black girls out there who are going to school right now, fear not. You know, we are rooting for you and we're there for you. And honestly, I could imagine the anxiety and the worry that they have going into schools right now today. But just be fearless and just fear not.
Thank you all so much for talking about that with us this morning.